Blackness. A silent, endless void. Then a flicker. Not of stars, but of flame. A shuttle, small, rugged, patched like a soldier's uniform, pierces the dark above a jagged planet. The planet is green and blue, but scarred, like something beautiful that had to fight too hard to survive. Earth. Captain Alara Voss stood stiff in her combat harness, eyes fixed on the viewport as the Deathworld Alliance delegation descended toward the third planet of Sol. She didn't blink. "We're sure about this," whispered Commander Trin, the insected liaison beside her. His antennae twitched with restrained anxiety. "This qualifies?" Alara didn't answer. She just smiled, small, unsympathetic. The shuttle shuddered as it pierced the lower atmosphere. From above, Earth looked calm. Deceptive. "It's always the quiet ones," she muttered. Cut to Deathworld Alliance Tribunal, 2 weeks earlier. A circular chamber lined with obsidian and blue fire crystal. Thousands of beings sat in judgment, leaders from worlds where acid rain was a gift and gravity cracked bone. They called themselves survivors. Warriors. Deathworlders. The speaker, scaled ivory-eyed, leaned forward. "Earth?" His voice held a mocking twist. "That soft marble orb?" A ripple of low laughter. "They build nothing lasting. Half their species still fights over water." Alara Voss had stood in the center, unblinking. "We've endured our extinction 100 times and never learned to die properly." They hadn't understood. So she invited them to visit. Present day, Earth, the landing. The shuttle touched down in the wastelands of old Siberia. The cold bit straight through armor. Wind howled like it mourned a buried god. "No dome?" Trin hissed, shrinking into his exosuit. Alara opened the hatch. "Welcome to Earth." They stepped into the storm. The Alliance's representatives, 6 in total, faltered. The air was breathable but heavy, the gravity just cruel enough. A toxic frost clung to their legs. "It's not a test," Alara said without turning. "It's just Tuesday." They trudged toward a structure barely visible through the snow, blackened steel ribs reaching out from a frozen hillside. "A war monument? A tomb?" A child's voice drifted across the wind. "Don't step on the red snow!" The delegates froze. A girl no older than 8 ran barefoot across the frost. No suit. No shield. Just a torn parka and a plastic toy rifle. "She's not protected?" gasped the reptilian envoy, his scales tightening with fear. Alara walked past the child without pause. "She's playing." "Playing what?" "Hunting ghosts." The alien glanced around. "Ghosts?" Alara paused. "Here, that means memories with teeth." Interior, Bunker 17A, Subterranean Earth. They descended into the bunker, 20 floors down. The air turned metallic. Harsh. Fluorescent lights flickered as if the walls themselves remembered suffering. "This was one of our first Cold War shelters," Alara explained. "We learned early, our biggest threat was always us." The insectoid sniffed. "Primitive." Alara opened a blast door. The chamber beyond buzzed with activity. Children trained in zero-G simulation harnesses. Elderly mechanics repaired drone parts on rusted tables. Teenagers decoded enemy transmissions with cracked tablets. "Is this a military camp?" one delegate asked. "No," Alara replied. "It's a school." Dialogue break, cinematic tension. "You train your children like this?" "We don't train them," Alara said. "We prepare them." "For war?" "For disappointment. For betrayal. For survival." Silence. "Tell me, delegate." She turned. "How did your species rise?" "Through adversity," Trin replied stiffly. "Natural disasters. Predators. Collapse." Alara nodded. "So imagine a world where the predator is your neighbor. The disaster wears a tie. The collapse is called progress." Flashback, footage archive. The delegates were shown archived footage, city skylines glowing in artificial beauty, then vanishing in mushroom clouds. A doctor crying over a cured disease, only for war to erase the patient. A crowd of humans dancing in rain. Starving in rain. Dying in rain. One alien whispered, "Why don't you flee this planet?" Elara looked at him, eyes unreadable. "Because it's ours." Climactic scene, the pit. She led them to the final location, a sealed arena known only as the pit. The door opened to a concrete ring where humans fought. Not for sport. For preparation. Two teens faced each other, bloody, panting, but still upright. The delegates were horrified. "They fight without shields?" "They fight with scars," Elara said. "Because shields can fail." The taller boy hesitated. His opponent, smaller, trembling, raised her fists again. She smiled through split lips. The boy lowered his guard. She tackled him. 1. The crowd of humans cheered, not for dominance, but for resilience. Final shot of Chapter 1. As they exited the pit, the wind picked up again. Elara paused by the exit tunnel and looked back at the delegates, who now moved slower, quieter. "You still think we're not a death world?" One of them, gray-skinned and once smug, shook his head slowly. "No. I think we didn't understand the definition." Elara stared up at the bruised sky. "On Earth, death isn't the end. It's the expectation." And still, they lived. Opening image. The Deathworld delegates sat in the observation room, their bodies still, their expressions tighter than when they'd arrived. What they'd witnessed in the pit wasn't forgotten, it echoed in the silence between heartbeats. Outside, the storm had worsened. Inside, the descent had only begun. Cut to the Archives Hall, beneath the old Chicago fault line. The tunnel sloped downward, the lights flickering overhead. Elara led them into a chamber that felt more crypt than facility. No polished tech. Just old earth, scarred, resistant. Steel shelves stacked with handwritten journals, printed newspapers, burned hard drives. "This is where we keep the truth," Elara said. The gelatinous delegate, Sval, blinked a dozen eyes. "Why not store it digitally?" "Because we don't trust memory," Elara answered. "Not even our own." She placed a journal on the table and flipped it open, pages smudged, edges singed. "Read," she offered. The delegates gathered. They expected battle logs. What they found were recipes. Love letters. Diary entries. A child's drawing of a mushroom cloud over a school. One delegate asked, "Why keep pain?" Elara didn't look up. "Because that's what made us." Scene shift, dining quarters, hours later. They ate quietly. Reconstituted protein for the visitors. Boiled roots and marrow broth for the humans. The silence was not awkward. It was saturated. Trin finally broke it. "You're not proud of your world, are you?" Elara set down her spoon. "No," she said. "I'm proud of us." "You separate the two?" "I have to," she replied. "Because Earth never gave us peace. We carved survival from its bones." Svala's voice bubbled, almost reverently. "And you never left." Elara's gaze locked on his. "We couldn't." Flashback interlude, security feed recording. The room dimmed as she played an old recording. A refugee camp, shivering humans packed in repurposed aircraft hangars. Rain leaking through the roof. A soldier offered his coat to an old woman. A medic sang while stitching wounds. Elara's voice narrated. "That was 20 years ago. We just lost Nairobi, New Shanghai, half of Brazil. Disease, climate collapse, economic cannibalism." The image flickered. "But we kept showing up." Mid-chapter shift, crisis breaks the routine. Suddenly the calm's alarm blared. Red lights bathed the room. All conversation stopped. Elara turned sharply. "What's wrong?" A young corporal ran in. "A scavenger group triggered a buried UXB. 3 wounded. 1 trapped under Frostcrete." Elara was already strapping her gear on. Trin stammered. "You're going out there? Yourself?" She gave him a curt nod. "It's how we lead." Sval blinked. "Let us see." Let us understand. Elara paused, then gestured for them to follow. Exterior, ruined metro tunnel, nightfall. The site was chaos, but practiced chaos. Earthborn chaos. Smoke curled from a crater. Frost clung to everything. The wind howled louder now, as if furious. A boy, maybe 17, lay pinned beneath a collapsed beam. Bone jutted through his thigh. He didn't scream. Just bit down on his own sleeve. A woman was already working to saw through the metal. Elara crouched beside the boy. "What's your name?" "Caleb," he rasped. "You stay awake, Caleb. We don't lose people on Tuesdays." Alien perspective, shock and disbelief. The delegates watched from a safe distance. No suits. No drones. Just humans, barehanded in ice and agony. The oldest delegate, Threnval, of the sulfur planet Morith, whispered, "On our world, a leader would never descend into the wreckage. It's inefficient." Elara turned her head without rising. "On ours," she said, "it's unacceptable not to." They cut the boy free. Blood darkened the snow. Elara lifted him with help, dragging him toward the med sled. Her gloves soaked crimson. And still, she moved without hesitation. Return to base, the silence after. Inside, the medics worked fast. The boy would live. Elara scrubbed her hands at a basin. The delegate stood behind her, quiet, changed. "You asked to see our qualifications?" she said without looking up. "This is it." Trin looked around. "Struggle?" "No," Elara replied, drying her hands. "Refusal. To surrender?" "To surrender to what's expected of us." Conflict begins to rise. Back in their quarters, Trin and Sval whispered. "This changes things?" Trin admitted. Sval pulsed gently. "They qualify. But if they join the Alliance," Trin said slowly, "the balance shifts. Their madness, their unpredictability." Sval said nothing. Trin narrowed his eyes. "They don't adapt to worlds. They conquer them. With time. With belief." A pause. "And if that belief is pointed outward." Cliffhanger closing image. Elara stood alone in the observation deck, overlooking Earth from beneath a dome of reinforced crystal. The stars blinked above. Her breath fogged the glass. Behind her, a soft voice. "They're afraid of you." She didn't turn. "They should be." The voice hesitated. "You want to join them anyway?" Elara nodded, still watching the horizon. "Not to be safe," she said. "To remind them what it costs." The storm raged on. But so did she. Opening scene. The cold was worse at dawn. Elara stood on a ridgeline above the ruins of old Anchorage, her coat snapping in the wind. Beneath her boots, the ground wasn't snow, it was ash hardened by decades of bitter seasons. Behind her, the Deathworld Alliance delegates climbed the slope, winded, despite their enhancements. Only Trin and Sval reached her side. Elara didn't turn. She pointed forward instead. "That," she said, "is where we learn how to lose." Flashback, Anchorage collapse. The holograms shimmered into place, flickering blue memories over gray reality. Skyscrapers collapsing like dominoes. Fires burning through snow. Civilians clawing into makeshift shelters, not to escape aliens or monsters, but their own failing systems. "Power grid failed midwinter," Elara narrated. "No foreign threat. Just slow decay. A bureaucratic oversight and minus 60 degrees." The delegates watched as bodies curled around each other. Some moved. Most didn't. "I was 12, she added softly. Svala's voice bubbled, barely audible. "And you stayed?" "We dug." Interior, command bunker, emergency briefing. Later that day, inside a reinforced bunker, Earth's representatives met with the Deathworld delegates. Maps flickered across the wall, showing energy surges along Earth's upper orbit. Unusual. Unwelcome. Elara stood at the front, back straight. "Unknown signal cluster just entered low Earth orbit. Pattern mimics Alliance frequencies, But we didn't authorize a delegation drop. Trin stepped forward, stiff. Impossible. We filed no such deployment. A pause. Alara's jaw clenched. Then someone's using your signature. Tension spikes, betrayal. Moments later, reports came in, satellite relays disabled. Skywatch stations blinded. Earth's orbital defenses initiated manual lockdown. Unauthorized cloaked object approaching from the dark side. An operator called out. Too big for a drone. Too fast for debris. Alara's face darkened. She turned to Trin. Tell me this isn't a preemptive strike. Trin looked genuinely shocked. I swear it isn't sanctioned. But it's one of yours, she said coldly. We don't have ships that stealthy. Cut to orbit, enemy contact. A projection streamed in, blurry, distorted, but clear enough. A sleek, unfamiliar ship pierced the atmosphere edge like a scalpel. It bore no Alliance flag. No Earth registry. Just a single symbol scorched into the hull, a black spiral. Sval whispered it aloud. The Spiral Accord. Alara frowned. Who? Trin's face lost color. Radical separatists. Exiled from the Alliance decades ago. Deathworld supremacists. They're using your tech, she hissed. Because they were us, Trin muttered. Decision point. Earth prepares to engage. The bunker erupted into motion. Generators roared. Old launch bays rebooted. Mech pilots armed themselves with salvaged weapons, decades old but battle-tested. Alara turned to the delegates. Stand back or stand with us. No time for debates. Sval hovered near her. Let us help. We know the spiral. She nodded once. Then gear up. To Trin. And you? He hesitated. I came to judge, he said slowly. Now I fight. Scene shift, permafrost defense platform, skyfall. The Spiral Accord struck fast, cutting through the thin layer of Earth's orbital defenses like fire through paper. Their weapons didn't vaporize. They mutated. A sentry tower melted, then reformed into twisted, obsidian shapes that reached toward the soldiers with glassy limbs. They used molecular rewriting, Sval warned. Touch that, and you're part of it. Earth's fighters didn't run. They closed ranks. Alara leapt onto the platform, rifle slung over one shoulder, blade in the other hand. To the spine, she shouted. Not the head. They don't think. They hive. Battle scene, brutal, close quarters. Frost exploded beneath boots. Human soldiers engaged shoulder to shoulder, not with elegance, but sheer audacity. A spiral drone latched onto a mech, splitting it open. Sparks showered. The pilot screamed. A young Earth soldier dove forward, stabbing the core of the drone with a sharpened steel bar. Not high-tech. Just will. Alara dragged a wounded fighter from the collapsing ledge. Her arms shook, but her stance never wavered. Trin fired cover rounds from a high platform, eyes wide with disbelief. They don't just fight, he murmured. They endure. Turning point, detonation protocol. Earth's command relayed a desperate fallback option, overload a power core buried under the ridge to send an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to fry spiral circuitry. Collateral damage? Enormous. Survival chance? Marginal. Alara stood over the console. Her thumb hovered above the ignition code. Sval looked at her. There are still people outside the radius. I know. Then why consider this? Because if I don't, she said, eyes locked on the pulsing red indicator, there'll be no one left. She hesitated. Then a voice crackled over comms. This is Caleb. I'm in the outer ring. Let it blow. It was the boy from earlier. Alara froze. Her hand trembled. Caleb. Do it. I'm just one. No, she said. You're not. Reversal. Alliance drops reinforcements. Just before the detonation command hit confirmation, another fleet burst through the clouds. Alliance warships. Real ones? Trin's beacon had reached them in time. Energy shields expanded over the ridge as the Alliance ships unleashed a precision strike. Spiral hulls shattered. The rewriting tech melted under anti-organic pulse cannons. The tide turned. Elara watched as a death wave of fire and light consumed the invaders. The line held. Earth, bloodied and smoking, survived. Final image of chapter. The battlefield was quiet now. Ash drifted like gray feathers. Elara walked past charred soil, past sparking metal, past the ruined spiral wreckage. Trin stood beside her. "Now do you believe we qualify?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. He just stared out at the broken horizon. And nodded. Once. Opening shot, the aftermath. Ash drifted like snowfall. Earth's sky, scorched raw just hours ago, now lay wrapped in eerie stillness, clouds bruised, horizon blood orange. Elara stood beside the wreckage of the spiral craft, boots crunching over melted alloy. Her coat was torn, her face streaked with smoke and blood. Around her, Earth soldiers limped, carried stretchers, or simply sat and stared, silent in their survival. The delegates stood apart. Watching. Processing. Sval finally moved toward her. "How many did you lose?" Elara's voice was low. "Too many." He nodded once, then asked what no other dared. "Would you do it again?" Her eyes flicked toward the smoldering skyline. "Tomorrow," she said. Cut to Alliance Emergency Session, orbiting Station Kether. The tribunal chamber buzzed with tension. Holoscreens showed Earth, still breathing, still burning. Sval stood before the council now, not as a neutral observer, but as a witness. They withstood an illegal spiral incursion using fractured defense systems, recycled ordnance, and human will alone. They held their ground when any other species would have evacuated. A gnarled delegate scoffed. "They're unstable. Half feral." Sval's gelatinous body shifted, slowly. "They're alive," he replied. "In ways we've forgotten." Scene shift, Earth, ceremony at the edge of the pit. A rough circle had formed on the ice field. Elara stood at its center, holding the tattered Alliance flag once meant to be decorative. She planted it into the frozen soil beside a fresh grave, Caleb's. No speeches. Just silence. Respect earned, not demanded. Then she turned to Trin. "You heading back up?" Trin hesitated. His eyes scanned the people behind her, men, women, children, scarred but standing. "Not yet," he said. "Not until it's official." Final debate, the vote. Back at the tribunal, the vote began. Hadar of Kesh, nay. Zurai of Eliath, aye. Kroth of Nevera, nay. Sval of Thon, aye. Trin of Velmari. A pause. Trin stood. His voice was steady. "Earth doesn't just meet the threshold. It defines it. Any world that survives itself, without giving up, is no threat to us. It's a warning to those who believe peace is permanent." The chamber fell silent. Velmari votes aye. Final count, approved. Earth, admitted. Cut to Earth, the Hall of Flags. Weeks later. A new hall had been carved into the side of the old capital ruins. Sunlight filtered through cracked windows. Dust hung golden in the air. Delegates from dozens of worlds stood beside humans, surrounded by banners of worlds once divided by fear. Elara stepped forward in formal armor, holding the Earth banner, black cloth, silver thread, no symbols. Just a hand reaching. No conquest. Just endurance. She planted it in its place. Cinematic dialogue exchange. Sval approached her. "You've changed us." She shook her head. "You came here to see what we were, not what we could become." Trin joined them. "Will you stay earthbound?" Elara looked toward the stars. "For now," she said. "The planet still needs me." Trin smirked. "It always will." Final conflict resolution, the spiral threat. In a secured chamber deep beneath the Alliance archives, fragments of the spiral vessel were studied. One shard pulsed faintly, residual code hidden beneath its surface. It wasn't dead. It was dormant, An Alliance scientist frowned. They weren't trying to destroy Earth, she said. They were testing its response. The room tensed. Preparing for something bigger? No, she whispered. Searching for something stronger. The lights dimmed, slightly. A message pinged through the system in spiral glyphs. One world down. Many left to prove. Back to Earth, epilogue. Elara walked alone through a burned-out orchard outside what was once Montana. The trees were skeletal, the earth blackened, but in one spot, green pushed through. She knelt. A single sprout fought through the ash. Behind her, a child's voice, familiar. Is it alive? She turned. A girl. Different, but the same fire in her eyes as Caleb had. Looks like it, Elara said. The girl knelt beside her. Will it stay that way? Elara looked up at the sky. That's up to us. Final image. The Earth viewed from space. Not pristine. Not glowing. But defiant. A jagged, weathered blue, scarred by its past, shrouded in clouds, and orbiting a dying sun. And yet, still spinning. Still alive. Text fades in. Deathworld status verified. Alliance status admitted. Mission status beginning.